Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Many thanks for joining us today for this conference on skills mobility partnerships. Many thanks also to the participants that will join us today online. Before actually diving into the presentation of the agenda and the welcoming remarks, we would like to welcome you. I'm Daphne Bouteiller-Paquet, and I work with IOM, the country office for Belgium and Luxembourg. And this is my partner in crime, Grégoire.
Yes, great. So I'm Grégoire Duchamp from Enabel, the Belgian Development Agency. Very happy to be there. It's quite incredible to be here in presence physically. Great for those who are online, but we could also bring the sun, so it's more impressive in Belgium too. Just before to start, a few practical elements regarding translation. So the whole event is translated in French, English and Dutch. So for the online participants, next to the volume icon, you will see a headphone icon. By clicking, you can select the correct language. For the in-person participants, you will see incredible seats too. If you get up on your left side, you will find all the material and the headphones, and you can select the language. 1 is for Dutch, 2 is for French, and 3 is for English. And there is also a volume, of course, available. If you have any question, for those who are online, there is a public and private chat. So in case you have technical issues, then you can use the private chat. In case you want to raise a question, please do not hesitate to ask it via the public chat. For those who are in person, we will have to raise our hands, not via Teams, but physically, and we will come and pass by with a microphone. And of course, just wait for the microphone to be there before you ask a question. All the relevant documents can be found in the tote bag for those who are in presence here today. For those who are online, you will find the documents in the folder handouts, also in the main screen. And also we can say that all the presentation can be found on the EMN Belgium website. And of course, also afterwards, you will find it directly on the website. Great, I think that's it for the practical points. Once again, do not hesitate in case of question to raise your hand physically or online also. And it's a pleasure now to introduce Isabelle Raas, the EMN, so European Migration Network Belgium coordinator, for a welcoming remark and also the overview of the day. Your turn.
Merci beaucoup Grégoire et bienvenue à tous. Je suis très heureuse au nom de l'European Migration Network Belgique et des organisations partenaires de cet événement d'aujourd'hui, donc l'IMN Autriche, l'IOM Belgique et Luxembourg, Enabel, l'agence belge de développement, de vous accueillir ici et en ligne pour cette conférence sur les Skills Mobility Partnership. Nous tenons bien sûr aussi à remercier chaleureusement les modérateurs et les orateurs qui ont accepté de participer aux différents panels qui se tiendront pendant ces 2 journées. Donc, je m'appelle Isabelle Raas et je suis la coordinatrice du Réseau européen des migrations Belgique, le point de contact belge de ce réseau qui rassemble la Commission européenne, des points de contact dans chaque État membre de l'Union européenne, la Norvège et depuis peu plusieurs pays observateurs, la Moldavie, la Géorgie, qui seront bientôt rejoints par l'Arménie, le Monténégro, la Serbie et l'Ukraine. Nous nous félicitons particulièrement de ces récentes collaborations et tenons à réaffirmer notre entière solidarité à l'égard de l'Ukraine. Notre réseau a pour objectif de collecter des informations sur l'asile et l'immigration pour soutenir l'élaboration de politiques dans ce domaine. Il est coordonné et subventionné par l'Union européenne, comme l'est aussi cette conférence. Au cours de l'après-midi, vous aurez l'occasion, vous avez peut-être déjà eu l'occasion, de voir pendant les pauses un petit film qui décrit très précisément nos missions et qui me permet d'être assez courte à ce sujet. Ce sur quoi je voulais insister, c'est le fait que le REM a notamment pour mission d'analyser de nouvelles approches à travers ses études, mais aussi grâce à des événements comme celui d'aujourd'hui, qui nous permet de rassembler des experts, des acteurs de terrain, des décideurs politiques pour mettre sous la loupe de nouvelles initiatives. Alors, qu'allons-nous aborder aujourd'hui et pendant ces 2 jours ? Une thématique essentielle de la migration du travail pour les États membres et pour la Commission européenne, les Skills Mobility Partnership. Pourquoi avons-nous choisi cette thématique ? Nous nous sommes rendus compte, à l'occasion des recherches que nous avons dû mener pour contribuer au rapport d'information de l'EMN sur les Skills Mobility Partnership, rapport qui vous sera présenté un peu plus tard, que la Belgique jouait un rôle phare dans ce domaine et il nous a paru intéressant de l'approfondir. Un autre élément a été l'annonce de la publication de la communication de la Commission Attracting Skills and Talent to the EU, qui nous a poussé à étendre le champ de notre conférence pour aborder aussi la dimension européenne des partenariats pour la mobilité. Alors, de quoi s'agit-il ? D'un nouveau concept de mobilité qui vise à développer des solutions durables et profitables, tant pour les pays d'origine et de destination que pour les travailleurs et les employeurs. Et ces solutions doivent permettre à la fois de rencontrer les besoins du marché du travail de l'Union européenne et d'intensifier les effets positifs de la migration sur le développement. Alors, comment vont s'organiser nos 2 journées ? Aujourd'hui, nous allons commencer par envisager la dimension européenne de ces partenariats. Comme je l'indiquais, la communication de la Commission invite les États membres à développer des talent partnerships en s'inspirant des projets pilotes existants. L'objectif à plus long terme étant de donner à ce type de partenariat un cadre plus structuré et coordonné pour assurer leur complémentarité avec les autres initiatives dans le domaine de la migration du travail. Nos invités, qui sont des acteurs de première ligne de la politique de migration, du développement et de l'emploi, pourront avoir cet après-midi un échange de vues sur ces nouvelles voies et concepts de mobilité du travail, en s'appuyant sur les analyses du service de recherche du Parlement européen et sur les travaux de l'EMN. Alors demain, nous poursuivrons nos travaux avec la dimension plus nationale des Skills Mobility Partnership. Nous consacrerons cette seconde journée à la mise en œuvre pratique des partenariats au niveau national et plus particulièrement en Belgique. Les 2 principaux partenaires de ces initiatives en Belgique sont nos hôtes, l'EMN Belgique et Luxembourg et Enabel, l'Agence belge de développement, qui encadreront nos travaux. Nous essayerons, en partant de la cartographie des projets pilotes réalisés par l'EMN Belgique et avec l'aide d'un premier panel d'acteurs de terrain, d'analyser la mise en œuvre de ces projets et d'identifier les éléments essentiels à retenir pour de futurs projets. Ensuite, un second panel rassemblera les acteurs des secteurs privés et publics qui essayeront aussi, à partir de leur expérience et des obstacles qu'ils rencontrent, d'envisager les mesures nécessaires pour mettre en place des schémas de mobilité durables qui devraient permettre de combler le fossé entre le talent et l'emploi. Et pour finir, c'est une des raisons qui nous a poussés à choisir ce format. Nous voulons permettre aux participants de poursuivre leurs échanges dans un format plus informel afin de mettre en relation d'éventuels futurs partenaires de projet. Je crois que j'en ai fini avec cette longue introduction. Je vous remercie de votre attention. Avant de céder la parole, je ne veux pas oublier de remercier tout particulièrement mon équipe et les membres des équipes des partenaires qui se sont totalement investis dans la préparation de cette conférence. Daphné, Grégoire, je vous confie notre audience.
Merci Isabelle. Many thanks for this very comprehensive overview, Isabelle. Actually, to start our day, we wanted to have two key speakers to set the scene. So we will have first distinguished speakers, Cecilia Navarra from the European Parliament Research Service. Cecilia will present us a very recent study that will actually highlight the European value add of the skills mobility partnerships. And you will also identify some very interesting policy options to actually improve the existing legal migration pathways. And your presentation will be immediately followed by the presentation of Alexander Spiegelfeld from IOM Austria and also EMN Focal Point. Alexander, you will present then the joint OECD-EMN Inform and present us with an overview of existing skills mobility partnerships that are currently implemented by EU member states, but also by third countries and international organizations. Cecilia, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here, finally to be in person, and also to see the faces of people that we met during the journey of this study. So it's really, and it's to be in 3D. It's quite unbelievable. So my name is Cecilia Navarra. Thanks a lot for your introduction. And I work at the European Parliamentary Research Service, and namely at the European Added Value Unit. So thanks a lot for the invitation today. So what I'm going to present is this. This baby with two annexes, which I've been working on with my colleague Mina Fernandez, who is also here. And it's a European added value assessment that has been accompanying a parliamentary own legislative initiative report that has been drafted by the LIBE committee and voted in plenary in November 2021. I trust you will have the chance to discuss more about this since the rapporteur of this legislative initiative is present today and will be part of the next panel. As the introduction illustrated well, I will present a broader picture, taking some steps back from the skill mobility partnerships to then focus on what we have analyzed regarding this specific policy option. So, does it work? Where should I point? Ah, yes, here. So first of all, what is a European added value assessment? So within EPRS, so European Parliamentary Research Service, at the European Added Value Unit, we conduct forward-looking assessments aiming at identifying the benefits of EU action in specific policy areas. EAVAs, as we call them, accompany parliamentary legislative own initiative reports, as it has been in this case, as I was just mentioning. For this study, we relied both on internal analysis and on an outsourced paper conducted by ESEPS. We conducted both legal and economic assessments, for example, using data from the labor force survey. It was a work done between April and September 2021. The basic structure, no? Yes. The basic structure of a European added value assessment is the following. So we start with an assessment of the main challenges in the status quo and the main impacts that are produced by these existing challenges. We then inquire whether the EU can and should act, both in terms of legal feasibility and including other factors, so for example, the coherence with EU overarching objectives. Finally, we discuss a set of policy options and we assess their potential impacts, including the economic impacts. And in this case, we conducted a joint work, a collaboration with the Joint Research Center of the Commission to carry on a macroeconomic assessment of some of the policy options. We present now extracts from the first and the third step. I still haven't understood exactly. Okay. So, in this in the case of legal migration policy and law, we identified 5 main problematic issues in the status quo that map, even if not one-to-one, into 5 main current impacts, suffered both by migrants themselves and by the EU economy and society. Those 5 main key issues are those that you find listed in this slide. So first, the lack of pathways for legal migration, especially for non-high-skilled labor migrant and youth. Second, existing barriers to equal treatment between migrants and nationals, and poor protection of migrants' workers' rights. Third, legal pathways, lack of pathways, for integration and social mobility for migrants in the EU. For example, we find that lower labor market outcomes for third country nationals when compared to EU mobile workers. Fourth, a well-known issue of fragmentation of the current framework, the current legal framework of the EU on migration, fragmented both across member states and across categories of migrants that risk making the EU labor market unattractive and unfair. Last but not least, the lack of a holistic approach, meaning a disproportionate attention to irregular migration with little attention to promoting legal pathways first, and to the main labor market issues at stake. These 5 challenges, I still didn't get how it works. Here. Produce, let's say we gathered together in 5 main impacts the problems, the impacts raised by the 5 key issues that I just mentioned. First, the existence of discrimination in the labor market and the risk of exploitative situation faced by migrant workers, for example, for those very workers whose skills are actually demanded in the EU labor market, but who work in undocumented conditions. Relatedly, structural needs of the EU economy are not met or are met by workers working in vulnerable and precarious conditions. This, from a societal perspective, leads to lost productivity and lost potential for innovation, some kind of a waste of human capital, and to gaps in the protection of fundamental rights, for example, where concerns have been raised, for example, in the area of border control and irregular migration management. Again, last but not least, one of the negative impacts is missed cooperation that is especially relevant for this today, for the discussion that we are having, missed cooperation and solidarity with third countries, for example, by not acknowledging enough the development potential of safe migration and skill development. From the analysis of the status quo, we tried to extract some key elements, which the analysis is of course broader, but some key elements that we thought are particularly relevant for the discussion regarding skill mobility partnerships. First, there is evidence that migrants are overrepresented among essential workers, yet they are more likely to be vulnerable workers. Recent evidence during the pandemic showed that 13% of essential workers are migrants. This share raises to 23%, for example, among personnel working in care work in the health sector, where the risk of undocumented work is higher than the average. Second, migrant workers are likely to be overqualified for the jobs they do. The results of our analysis based on the labor force survey indicate that half of the third country nationals with a tertiary degree so half of them work on low or medium skilled professions, while, for example, this share is 20% for EU mobile workers. Third, both in policies and in EU funds, legal labor migration pathways receive relatively little attention. A recent assessment of the EU Trust Fund for Africa identifies that 2% of funds are devoted to this purpose. And this contributes to an unbalanced approach towards the countries of origin. Let's get to the policy option now, to the policy options, plural. We defined a wide set of policy options based on the literature and on the previous positions expressed by the European Parliament, that are both tackle It was seen in a labor market perspective. They tackle at both supply side and demand side of the labor market. They are grouped in 4 main areas, as you can see there. First, policy options to promote the recognition of skills and qualification of migrant workers. Okay, so now it was very quick. I leave it like it is. Second, policies facilitating access to regular work for migrants already present in the EU, especially asylum seekers, students, and family members of other migrants. Third, creating new pathways for legal migration. I will get back to this in 1 second. Fourth, improving workers' rights and working conditions for migrants in terms of equal treatment, enforcement of labor rights, and access to residency. As you can see, among the third policy options, so creating new pathways for legal migration, we worked on several options, including EU support to skill mobility partnerships, on which we focus today. We will get back to the other options because one of the outcomes of our study is the great degree of complementarity between different policy options, and we will underline some specific complementarities in a while. But let's switch now to skill mobility partnerships. Okay. So in our assessment, skill mobility partnerships are defined as migration pathways that connect migration and training programs. We focus on a specific type of partnerships, the global skill partnerships, since from a literature review it seemed particularly promising and interesting to develop. Of course, we are aware that several types of options exist, and it would have been, of course, interesting to develop more, but this has been our, focus for this reason. Global skill partnership, in our study, we define them as legal migration channel with a strong training component and skill development, where vocational training is developed especially in the country of origins and not necessarily and only targeted for people who want to migrate, but also for potential workers that stay in the country of origin. The focus is on different skill levels and especially not only on high-skilled. That matches with the analysis that I just previously mentioned. In terms of assessment, to quickly have a look to the benefit side, we see a number of main expected benefits from this action, from this option, which are, first of all, to develop legal pathways for different skill levels. By this, one of the potential positive impact is the reduction of irregular migration. Secondly, via skill enhancement, one of the possible benefits is a possible improvement of fair treatment through skill upgrade. There is the possibility that one of the expected benefits is that this option offers a more balanced approach to migration management and therefore improve relationships with third countries and could help address the structural needs of the EU economy. We speak about structural needs on purpose, since in our study we aim to go beyond the labor shortage approach, so the vacancies declared by companies, which we consider to be an imperfect indicator of labor needs in the economy. And rather, we think that a structural need-based approach is more promising. That is the idea that there are some strategic sectors for the EU that respond to economic and social priorities. For example, energy transition or the care sector. So this is the definition that we adopted. Of course, it's not mutually exclusive with the others. On the cost side, it's a discussion that is especially relevant because this is also where we think that the EU could play more relevant roles, could play, part of its relevant role. Okay. Costs of implementation of skill mobility partnerships, we know that there's, and we'll have to learn from the discussion of people working actually hands-on on this. It's important, it's widely debated. We consider in our analysis both fixed and variable costs, so mainly costs of training, and I will get back to them in a moment because our analysis of cost was especially aimed at feeding into the economic model. So just hold for a second. Our studies identifies two main, let's say, potential risks that could be kept at bay. First, the risk that sponsoring companies have excessive power on migrant workers, as might have been the case, and the literature analyzed that this has been the case in some guest work programs in the past, that, for example, can be related in cases where there's an exclusive link between companies and workers. A second set of risks could arise when skill mobility partnerships are used as a conditional tools to trigger other effects. For example, policies on return or border management. These risks limiting the credibility of these partnerships toward third countries. These countries may see partnerships as a tool for what several scholars call externalization of border control. It should be noted that the 2015 assessment, so it's quite of an old assessment of partnerships, did not find at the time a significant increase of first residence permits following the first wave of skill mobility partnerships. Going to the economic impacts and the net impact, so economic impact net of the costs, this is where the macro modeling work kicks in. And this is where we have been working with the Joint Research Center of the Commission. So which have been the input of the model? And here we come back to the cost. In our study, we relied on the preliminary findings kindly shared by the Center for Global Development that estimate the cost of a number of programs. Based on this, we approximated a cost per person which is between 1,400 and 3,400 euros per person, it was a calculation only done for the purpose of the model, so I should warn you that it should be considered as an approximation and works focusing hence on some specific projects could have a more detailed approach on that. And it has to be noted that the input that we used for the model does not take into account the potential cost reduction of EU intervention on this. The number of migrants and sector of employment are estimated on the basis of existing programs and labor market needs. The main mechanism that we assume to be at work is an increase in labor productivity of migrants and therefore an improved allocation of human capital, specifically in sectors where there is an excess labor demand. The final net result, as you can see, is a positive impact net of costs of 0.02% of GDP, which translates in a little bit less than 3 billion per year. Of course, this should be taken as a broad approximation, but gives the idea of the net benefits. The models, moreover, finds that the impact on wages of both migrants and national workers is positive. How could the EU act? First, we identify two main channels of action. First, support and scaling up of skill mobility partnerships that on the cost side could mean supporting the financing of skill mobility partnerships and promote economies of scale to reduce the unitary costs. And then sharing of information and good practices, help identifying sectors and professions where partnership could be more beneficial, and promote multilateral rather than bilateral partnerships. A second possible role is in mitigating the risks. On one hand, so to avoid weak position of migrants on the labor market, enforcing strong wage and labor standards and involving civil society in the development and the monitoring of the programs, such as diaspora organizations and trade unions, and avoid conditionalities on other aspects of the migration agenda, such as returns and border management, which would increase the potential of skill mobility partnerships to improve both economic benefits and fundamental rights protection. As anticipated, we found in our research that there are high complementarities between policy options and also including complementarities between skill partnerships and other policy options. And namely, the first and the fourth of our scheme, if you remember the scheme before, if you paid enough attention. Yes. So the promotion of recognition of qualifications and the enforcement of workers' rights and better working conditions for third country nationals. We focus especially, since for the sake of time, we say some word on the complementarities with the first one, but of course we're happy to discuss more, and we will find more in the study. A more comprehensive and fair assessment of skill and competencies sometimes is more complex. Okay, so these are the two where we find greater complementarities. And okay. A better and more comprehensive and fairer recognition of qualifications, yeah, I'm at the end, of qualifications could be beneficial both to beneficiaries of skill mobility partnerships and to, in general, third country national workers in the EU. There is evidence, there's a recent study on Germany that highlights that 3 years after recognition of qualifications, migrant workers earn 20% higher wages and are 25% more likely to be employed. Possible EU actions in this area are, for example, the development of common rules, possibly on sectoral basis for the recognition of qualification, the extension to third country nationals of the Directive on Professional Qualification, or the establishment of a system led by the European Training Foundation to facilitate certificates of equivalency. So in connection with skill mobility partnerships, this could promote better integration and general upward harmonization of education in a global perspective, and help to protect rights and conditions of workers, of beneficiaries of skill mobility partnership. To conclude, and to go back of the general conclusion of our work, so our study finds substantial benefits of a EU role in, of the EU role in promoting well-designed skill mobility partnerships, and where the benefits are exceed the costs. Gains are substantially larger where several barriers are addressed, so several policy options are implemented to promote legal pathways, to promote access to labour market in non-vulnerable position, equal treatment, and pathways to social mobility. From the macroeconomic modelling, we get in the end that we can get up to 74 billion per year of economic gain in the case of policy options that address frictions on the supply side of the labour market, and up to almost 38 billion per year in case of demand side, of addressing demand side barriers. Moreover, we find positive impacts on wages, both of national workers and of migrants. And even more importantly, this action could promote greater fundamental rights protection, coherence with EU goals and international standards, and a more balanced approach towards third countries. I hope it has been a quite clear and not too rushing presentation, and thanks a lot for the occasion to present our work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cecilia, for this very interesting presentation. And I think that some of your recommendations resonate quite strongly with us as we're implementing labor mobility schemes. Over to you, Alexander.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cécile. I mean, you provided us with a lot of arguments to further develop SMP skills mobility partnerships and global skills partnerships. My name is Alexander Spiegelfeld. I work for IOM Austria. IOM Austria is the national contact point in Austria for the EMN. I'm very happy to be here today in person after 2.5 years not being in Brussels. It's good to be here. It's also very motivating to see that so many people are here and are interested into the topic. We had a similar event in Austria just in April, also with many people attending, and it was just great to see that there is such a lot of interest. So what am I going to do today? I'm going to present you an EMN policy paper, or EMN Inform, as we call it in the EMN, on skills mobility partnerships. I would like to start with a short or further information on the EMN, as I think that many of you don't know the EMN. As my colleague Daphne or my colleague Cecile already said, the EMN is a network of national contact points that provides up-to-date, objective, reliable, and comparable information. But how does it actually work? So each year, the EMN NCPs and the European Commission, they propose topics for the next year, and based on their priorities, they select those topics, and they can either be full-fledged studies or EMN informs, those short policy papers. So back in 2020, EMN Austria and EMN Sweden together proposed an EMN inform on the topic of skills mobility partnerships, which was then selected by the EMN member states. So this means there is a high priority on that topic on a European level. So the aim of the inform was to provide a guidance on what skills mobility partnerships and similar concepts could look like and what member states could actually learn from each other. And yes, before I go into the details of EMN informs, we need to discuss the terminology. As you heard there already, there are quite a few terms that are used that dominate the discussion, and sometimes they are used interchangeably. So I would like to start, as Cecile already elaborated on, skills mobility partnerships. Skills mobility partnerships are actually an example of skills mobility partnerships, but there are also other forms. A global skills partnership, as we already heard, is usually a bilateral agreement between governments and employers, and governments and employers get active in destination countries to provide resources for vocational training of potential migrants. So not everybody eventually needs to migrate. The understanding of skills mobility partnership is, on the other hand, very much broader. According to the IOM, so this is the definition by the IOM, they possess the following 5 components, which is formalized state cooperation, multi-stakeholder involvement, training, skills recognition, and migration and mobility. Among other things, the SMPs can actually include vocational trainings in the countries of origin or destination. They can include internships in the destination countries or scholarships. Skills mobility partnerships then really may vary in form, modality, type of stakeholders, their goals, but eventually, and that's very important, they place skills development and the mobility and mutual benefits for the countries of origin and destinations at the heart of their effort. Finally, there are talent partnerships. Talent partnerships, this is a term that was used first in the new Pact on Migration and Asylum by the European Commission and was further developed in the recent communication on legal migration by the European Commission. It describes a planned, or it is a policy framework, as well as funding support for the cooperation with third countries to better match labor and skills needs in the EU. The aim of all 3 concepts is simple and similar. They want to create a quadruple win for the countries of origin, the destination, for migrant workers and employers, and the private sectors, and thus enhance the positive effects of migration and on development. For the purpose of the EMN Inform, we actually decided to concentrate on the definition of skills mobility partnerships because it allowed us to provide the most holistic picture and to include the most initiatives on the European level. So what did we actually try to achieve with this joint EMN OECD Inform? We wanted to map the experience with implementing skills mobility partnerships and similar initiatives in the EU and globally. We wanted to explore the main challenges and the benefits, and also, like today, form a basis for further discussion at EU and national levels. But I have to say, this Inform did not aim to provide an exhaustive mapping of SMPs or similar initiatives, but rather to provide an initial overview on the types that actually exist. Given the diversity of the related initiatives and multitude of actors involved, we tried to reach out as far as possible. The analysis was prepared on the basis of contributions of 23 member states and by the OECD, the European Training Foundation, ICMPD, the Center for Global Development, the Association of Crafts and SMEs in Europe, and of course the IOM. And I'm really happy that Jean-Christophe and Helen are here today because we worked together on this paper. So what were the most important, what was most important about the EMN Inform, and the most important conclusion is that the experience among member states differ significantly. As I said, we had 23 member states responding, and 8 member states actually implement skills mobility partnerships. However, there are many member states that also implement skills mobility partnerships that are similar but don't really fit into the definition, which is true for the Czech Republic, Lithuania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Most SMPs focus on youth exchange, mobility of young, qualified professional or graduates, as well as circular migration in the field of higher education. Most SMPs are implemented as bilateral agreements, programs, or pilot projects. There is no regional focus that we could find. Now, I would like to give you some examples of the initiatives that we identified. So the EU has various funding programs that facilitate and finance a number of SMPs and SMP-like programs and projects. So there is, for example, the Mentor 2 project. It is a multi-sector circular migration scheme financed by the EU Mobility Partnership Framework that offers professional training and opportunities to young ICT professionals or young professionals from Morocco and Tunisia in North Italy. Also, there's DigiTalents. It is a mobility advancement program that brings young ICT specialists from Moldova or the Republic of Moldova to the Slovak Republic. Also, we have the IOM Match project that you will hear about later, which is a vocational training in the destination country, which is accompanied by temporary job placement in one of the 4 participating EU member states. And of course, Belgium also reported back with 5 SMPs that fit into the definition. 2 examples, the Polin project was implemented between 2019 and 2021, and it supported the mobility of ICT Moroccan workers in the Flanders region. Also, there is the PAM project, which is currently implemented since 2021. It is an entrepreneurial mobility scheme and provides internships and trainings in Belgium, and offers temporary mobility to owners of micro and nano businesses. There is, of course, Germany, and Germany is, probably has the most SMP initiatives right now in place, especially implemented by the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. It aims at piloting partnerships with selected countries to test scalability, sustainable, and development-oriented models for vocational training and labor migration to Germany. The GIZ implements, for example, a famous pilot project which is called Global Skills Partnership Nursing, which has a focus on shortening the recognition process in Germany. The GIZ actually implements relevant training content into the curricula in partner countries and fosters the knowledge exchange between partner institutions. There's another pilot project which is called Hand in Hand for International Talent. This project matches companies with internationally qualified personnel from Brazil, India, and Vietnam in a number of skilled occupations. Another example would be Ireland. Ireland implemented the International Medical Graduate Training Initiative. Thank you. Which was launched in 2013, as I said, and beneficiaries carry out postgraduate medical training in Ireland offered by relevant training colleges. Quickly now, there's also a project called GECKO, which is a circular migration system aims at recruiting workers in sectors with labor shortages, such as agriculture in Spain. The objective of that project is actually that the beneficiaries who return to their home countries can use the skills that they've learned. There is also, very importantly, non-EU examples that we also cover in this EMN Inform with important lessons learned. One is the Australian Pacific Technical College, which was launched in 2006. One initial problem of the APTC was that it was not connected to labor migration channels, as you already mentioned before, or international matching mechanisms. So this meant that actually graduates had to conduct their own international job research, and also the project was very costly. Furthermore, another example would be the Korean employment permit system, which actually brings 40 to 50,000 new workers to Korea annually. The program was introduced in 2005, and the expectations, such as with the GECKO program, was that actually that the workers would capitalize on the skills they acquired during their employment and then use those skills when they return to their home country. This, in fact, was not the case. They would actually work in other occupations. So there was a reform, and they reformed the trainings in a way that they are now focusing on employment possibilities upon their return. Let me now get to some of the conclusions. SMPs are not very widely spread policy tool in the EU, but a few member states are increasingly interested. There is ongoing public discussion on SMPs, for example, in Finland, Poland, Portugal. SMPs are usually not part of the overall labor migration or development assistance strategy or policy. The reason for this is, the reasons differ, but overall they are linked to member states mostly focusing on attracting workers rather than establishing really a special relationship with one or more third countries in particular. Also, the majority of SMPs are relatively new. Some are in the pilot stages, and most have not yet been evaluated. However, there is evidence, and anecdotal evidence, that initial results are very positive in terms of migrant mobility and skills development. Certain key success criteria we were able to identify, and very importantly, it's the involvement of all stakeholders, especially the employers in both origin and destination country, as well as cost sharing. So finally, let me provide you with some outlooks. So, well-designed and implemented SMPs may in the future act as a vehicle for bilateral and multilateral cooperation to enhance migration and mobility, as it is also envisioned in the European Commission communication on legal migration. Yet challenges really persist, and most examples of SMP cited and under development share a common issue. They are small in scale, fragmented, and they are generally costly. But actually, the issue of high costs should be placed in the context of the costs deriving from unfilled vacancies and the growing demand for skilled workers that are left unmet. Scaling up the number of participants or projects will only have a limited effect on the cost saving. Hence, the cost will need to be shared, as I said, also among the employers. SMPs therefore have to meet employers' needs to be scaled up. Furthermore, appropriate legal migration channels need to be used or newly developed. To make SMPs work on a large scale, the OECD recommended to establish clearinghouse or skills hub, skills mobility partner to establish clearinghouses or hubs for skills mobility partnerships. These clearinghouses would serve all stakeholders, allowing employers and their representatives to go straight to a single place to access states, training institutions, certificates, and recognition bodies. So finally, given the early stage of SMPs and similar initiatives, looking forward, there is a need for continuous evaluation to ensure that such partnerships are functional, sustainable, and of mutual benefit. Thank you very much for your time. I don't know, is there any time for questions? No? We have to wrap it up?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, don't worry.
If it's possible. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, Cecilia and Alexander. We will have time for questions, of course, afterwards. We'll have some discussion with the audience here and, of course, online. So, indeed, I can only indicate what Daphne mentioned. It's very reasoning to actors, implementing actors, what you mentioned, both of you. So, from the EPRS study and the EMN Inform. So, great. They will also feed the next discussion, so the next EMN roundtable. So, what is EMN Roundtable specifically? So, initiated by the European Migration Network. Those are roundtable implemented by EMN since 2020 in the field of migration policy making. And they aim, let's say, three goals. The first is to foster policy relevant and also innovative thinking. So innovation, clearly. Create also an out-of-the-box thinking forum. So out-of-the-box innovation, this is really also in line to each other. And the last element is also to encourage open discussion, what we hope to create today, both online and here in presence. So they are organized in close cooperation with the European Commission, also European Migration Network as such, but also external actors. So today, the EMN Roundtable will focus on the European and global context of these famous skills mobility partnerships that we are discussing since a few minutes, and how they are also tested, how they are implemented in the field in reality. So we have the chance here to that the EMN Roundtable will be moderated by Melissa Siegel from the Maastricht University, who manage also several migration projects. She's also co-director of the Maastricht Center for Citizenship, Migration and Development. I hope I'm correct. And her main research interest lies also in the drivers and the consequences of migration in general, but more specifically, the link between migration and development. So, Melissa, the floor is yours. May I kindly invite you to come here on stage together with the distinguished panel members, namely Helen Dempster, Anita Vella, Camilla Hogstrom, Abir Al-Assalani, Bert Gabriels, Antonin Seidel, and Jean-Christophe Dumont. Very much. Thanks a lot. Have a great discussion.
Great, so thank you for that introduction. I have to say that it is so great to see all of you in person and those who are also online. I think for many of us, this is probably one of the big events that we can actually be back together and in person. So I think we really, really appreciate that. I mean, you can already see this great distinguished panel. I really appreciate that everyone took the time out of course, very, very busy days to also be here with us. Now, what are we going to do in this panel, first of all? So we have multiple goals of this panel. So we want to clearly outline what talent partnerships are, what skills mobility partnerships are, and where they fit in with the overall labor mobility framework of the EU, and of course, the future policy outlook on the topic. Now, we know that, the need for skills in Europe is not new, and it's continually evolving. So the main goal of this debate or this discussion is to understand these different concepts that we've been talking about, to also understand where they fit better within EU labor mobility frameworks. And of course, finally, we have the presence here of also the OECD, international organizations also. And so we want to understand this discussion also not only focusing on migration, but also the potential for development and to identify how it is implemented in, of course, all of the partnerships that we're talking about today. So I'm going to first go one by one through each of the panelists and ask some very specific questions to them where we will develop these topics. And then after that, we'll give some questions to kind of everyone as a whole. So let me first start with my panelists to my left. Of course, we have already heard a bit about these partnerships. And Helen Dempster to my left is a policy fellow and assistant director of migration, displacement, and humanitarian policy at the Center for Global Development. That's been doing a lot of amazing work in this topic. So, Helen, the Center for Global Development actively advocates for global skills partnerships and this approach in general. Now, in the EMN and OECD Inform, we read that talent partnerships and global skills partnerships are often interchangeable. Could you briefly define the global skills partnerships and explain how they relate to the talent partnerships and how they're different? I know we heard a little bit about this before, but I definitely think it's always good to have a review. So, Helen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Melissa, and it's really lovely to see you all here, and hello to everybody joining us at home. As Melissa already mentioned, Alexander kind of stole my thunder and answered my question, but there is a lot of confusion about all of these terms. They all sound basically the same. People use them interchangeably, and so I do think that a little bit of a refresher is useful. So you'll have heard a few of these terms today already. Mobility partnerships, talent partnerships, skills mobility partnerships, global skills partnerships, a lot of very similar terms there. What exactly do we mean by these? So firstly, and I would say a lot of this is very subjective because we don't have strict definitions for many of these terms and not everybody agrees. So this is my personal opinion. In my mind, mobility partnerships are purely about recruitment. So they're agreements between two or more actors that facilitate migration. For example, you may see an agreement that says we will recruit 2,000 of your nurses per year. If there is a development benefit to the country of origin, it's normally solely through remittances themselves. Secondly, you have skills mobility partnerships, which we've heard a lot about today already. So according to the IOM, they're about better linking migration, training, and education. So in my mind, for a partnership to be a skills mobility partnership, it must include some form of training and skills recognition. So this training could be taking place in the country of origin before the migrant leaves, in the country of destination after the migrant arrives, or both. Thirdly, you have global skill partnerships. So the original Global Skill Partnership was developed by my CGD colleague, Michael Clements, back in 2012. In my mind, it is a form of Global Skill Partnership. In the Global Skill Partnership model, the country of destination would agree to finance and support training within the country of origin before people move. The view is that some of the trainees would stay, those of whom we say are on the home track, and some would move to the country of destination, those we say are on the away track. Now, you could include many additional investments in these types of partnerships, including things like promoting better training infrastructure, supplying equipment, improving migration management, or other forms of capacity, whatever development priorities the country of origin has. Obviously, as part of this concept, you're focusing on skills that are needed in both countries. This is not about satisfying the labour market of one, it's about satisfying both labour markets. And therefore, global skill partnerships tend to focus, not exclusively, but tend to focus on mid-skill sectors. So these are things like healthcare, construction and engineering, tourism and hospitality, and some lower-skilled IT professional roles. Now, finally, you have talent partnerships, and I'm sure we'll hear much more about these in a second. Talent partnerships, as far as I'm aware, are meant to be skills mobility partnerships. They're meant to better link migration, training, and education. Now, these partnerships could be bilateral or multilateral, and they could focus on many different skill levels. But the final thing I would say is that I would argue we really need to keep this focus on the development impact of these agreements on countries of origin. We need to go beyond remittances to see how countries of destination can meaningfully strengthen systems within countries of origin to create more resilient and sustainable labour markets for everyone. Now, implementing the Global Skill Partnership approach is one way to do this, but there are definitely others that many in this room are innovating and testing. And I hope that we can continue this process of piloting, testing, evaluating, and most importantly, scaling. So I hope that's helpful, but I'm happy to answer questions later as well.
Yes, thank you, Helen. Definitely thank you for the review and also taking it a step further there. Thanks. So then I want to move on to Anita Vella, who is the head of unit at DG Home for Legal Pathways and Integration at the European Commission. So Anita, my question for you. In 2021, the European Commission launched the concept of talent partnerships and its recent skills and talent package. It identifies the operationalization of partnerships as one of its three pillars to advance the EU in the so-called war on talent, or the global race for talent. So what are the key features of the talent partnerships, and what will the role of the EU be in the operationalization of these partnerships?
Thank you so much, Melissa. And first of all, good afternoon to everyone, to the panel and to the audience. I see quite a few familiar faces, so it's also reassuring. No, definitely. So yes, we hear all these concepts, and we launched, let's say, the talent partnerships concept and initiative already last year with this high-level conference. And We have come a long way now with the skills and talent package to clarify a little bit how we as Commission, as EU, see the concept politically in terms of vision and what it is and how we intend to take this forward. One important premise that I would like to start from is that from our side, I mean, our whole skills and talent package, including talent partnerships, really needs to be seen as part of a puzzle, and that puzzle being the new pact on migration. So this package, in a way, was the last piece of the puzzle that we brought out. And it's in that sense as well that we want to see talent partnerships being developed. So this is really for us part of a broader and more strategic, let's say, comprehensive approach to the way we manage and cooperate on migration with key partner countries of the EU. So it's important to emphasize this. It's not just about the talent exchange or the skills, but it has to be seen in a broader cooperation challenge and sort of effort with certain partner countries. And in terms of key features, definitely to start with, we want these partnerships to be co-owned from both sides. So once again, we are not talking about a project or a program. It really has to be a partnership whereby we have more than one member state that wants to engage politically in co-owning a partnership with a specific partner country. At the same time, we need to have obviously the co-ownership from the other side. So it's really a two-way strong political engagement, but to actually have a partnership which is scalable. So we already heard the issue of scalability. This is very much the issue, and this is what we want to work on in view of having, a partnership which, of course, builds on all these cooperation activities that are going on, but also tackles the challenges that we have seen being faced by the current partnerships. So this is at least the ambition, is to try and start somewhere, but we start somewhere where we know that a partnership can actually be co-owned, also in terms of capacities from the side of the partners, and where there is potential to have a scalable partnership. So not necessarily talking about a few mobilities, but rather, a broader, let's say, framework with different activities that could be taken forward. So definitely the issue of scalability. Secondly, we need to be able to design this partnership together. And this is, again, one of the challenges, and the way we see, linking a bit to the operationalization steps and what we will do next. This is definitely what we will be doing. So we are now in discussion, first of all, with member states to understand who are the ones that are interested in taking forward specific partnerships with Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. Yeah? So we have set, let's say, these three countries as a first priority. And once we do that, we need to do it as well on the basis of specific sectors of cooperation, bringing in employers and representatives from the business side, from those member states that are interested. And once we have a clear, let's say, offer from the side of the EU and the member states, we will, in parallel, we have already started in a way, but once we have something more concrete, we will be discussing that, of course, with each partner country. And we plan to do this already now over the summer, with a view to then have a specific technical roundtables, one in Morocco, one in Tunisia, and one in Egypt, later towards the end of the year, whereby we can bring the necessary stakeholders from both sides. And this, of course, will have to be not just the migration authorities. This is the challenge. We need to bring in other ministries, other social partners, other sectors, depending on what we want to focus the partnership upon. So this is a little bit what we have ahead of us. And then another key feature which will come, let's say, in the process of concretizing these partnerships is the fact that we want these partnerships to be a framework that can really mobilize different funding sources. So a little bit in a Team Europe approach, we hope that, let's say, the partnerships that will be designed are kind of ambitious enough to be able to attract more funding and be able to draw on what exists already, like the THAM program, our MPF, possibly we get the private sector to invest as well. So it will be key actually to show that there is a scalable partnership going forward, and thereby there is a case for bringing different funding sources together. So it will not be, you know, a project that is funded, but rather a framework that draws on different funding programs. So this is a little bit how we see things, and happy to continue the discussion.
Great, thank you. So I love those key features of co-ownership, co-creation, scalability. It really sounds like things are going, hopefully, in the right direction there. So I want to kind of keep with the ideas, the frameworks of the Commission by turning over to our next guest, which is Camilla Hogstrom, who is the Deputy Head of Unit at DG IMTA and the Migration and Forced Displacement section at the European Commission. Now, my question for you has to do with the pact. So the Commission announced a quote, a change in paradigm in cooperation with non-EU countries that can be centered around comprehensive, balanced, and tailor-made migration partnerships destined to be mutually beneficial for the different parties involved. So what is the role you see for the talent partnerships in the overall kind of tailor-made migration partnerships? And how will this be a shift in paradigm compared to, of course, past partnerships?
Okay, thank you, and great to be here in person. Also for me, it's I'm not used to it anymore. Now, great. Thank you for the presentations before. By the way, I come from the Commission as well, from a development perspective. So I will, of course, focus my intervention a little bit more on the partner countries and how we see the talent partnerships changing the way we are working. I think it's important to say that labor migration is not a new topic. It's not something that came with the pact. It is something that we have been working on for years and years, perhaps not very successfully, but certainly what I think the pact brought with this attention to talent partnership, and it really did make a difference. We in DG INPA were very happy about the new pact and its focus on the talent partnerships. It's that we want to be serious about it. Mm-hmm. We are working with third partner countries, we are facing some credibility issues with our migration policy. We talk about comprehensive and balanced all the time, but there has been some skepticism in the relationships with third partner countries. They don't believe us. And that has been an issue for us in our relations and working with partner countries also on other aspects of migration. So I think that is, for me, working in development cooperation, one of the key aspects of the new talent partnerships. And once again, we are very happy that it's now going to be, and we are really going to make an effort to seriously address legal migration and labor migration. I think the shifts, perhaps, that I see compared to what we have done in the past with these talent partnerships, we are in the beginning, let's be honest, but this is at least how we see it, and of course working very closely with colleagues in DG Home. We talk about mutually benefiting partnerships. I think this is key. From a development perspective, these partnerships have to be equally beneficial to the partner country. Otherwise, we don't talk about development. We need to focus on the development aspects. What does it mean? We need to take the needs and the priorities of the partner countries in consideration when we design these partnerships. We cannot only look at the EU needs. And I think, again, from a development perspective, this is absolute key. Mm-hmm. we need to look at the labor markets and the labor market needs in the origin countries to make sure that the skills that can be developed in these initiatives, in these partnerships, are relevant, are needed, and can be put to use in the partner countries upon return. And I think this is a key aspect, once again, from a development perspective. So that, I think, is one thing. Second, rather than perhaps in the past having worked more short-term, sort of gap-filling type of programs on labor migration, we should, I believe, work more long-term, more structural, with partner countries, including governments, other stakeholders in partner countries. This also includes capacity building for partner governments in order for them to be able to manage these partnerships from their side. We talk about co-ownership, and I think that is a very important part. And then thirdly, from my perspective, and we have talked about it, about the scalability, about the costs, about what we have seen. We have been piloting for a long time now. 5 years of piloting, it's a long time. I agree with previous speakers, we need to continue, we need to evaluate these pilots, but in the end we need to scale up and we need to broaden. And I think, and you said it, Anita, it's not about one-on-one bilateral partnerships. We need to also bring in more member states, more partners into these partnerships in order for them to have an impact. So I think from my side, that is what I take from the talent partnerships.
Thank you very much. So, you know, it's great to hear that, of course, in the past there has been maybe a credibility issue and all these pilots have been done, and now it's basically time for the EU to put their money where their mouth is, effectively, right? So we've heard now from representatives from the Commission, so let's turn now to the EU Parliament. So our next guest is Aber Al-Salani, who is a member of the European Parliament and specifically representing Renew, and is also part of the Libe Committee. I think we'll also have a quote that will come up on screen here, also for my question for you. So in November of 2021, it will come, I think. In November of 2021, the European Parliament adopted a resolution with the recommendations to the Commission on legal migration, policy, and law. So, and in this, they called on the Commission to, I will paraphrase now, include in its proposal a framework for talent partnerships with third countries that member states could opt into. And, you know, that inspiration for the talent partnerships can be found in existing skills-based agreements in member states, and that talent partnerships should be developed in consultation with relevant organizations, both in member states and in third countries, which we've also heard about previously. So if you now look at this skills and talent package, what is missing, and to what extent has the call of the EP, or the European Parliament, been heard by the Commission?
Well, thank you, Melissa, for this very interesting question. It was a long one. And thank you for the invitation and giving me this opportunity to be here. It's a real pleasure to see you all, and even a bigger pleasure to see you guys from the Taurus, Mina, and Cecilia. We had many meetings, but they were all online. It is great to see you in person as well. And thank you for the presentation. Because it sets this piece of these proposals in a very, very good and necessary context. While working on this file, we tried to have a pragmatic approach to what is achievable, because it goes without saying, you know all, that labor migration is very often mixed with other types of migration, and there is a very negative narrative around migration in general. And we really are in a situation where we are competing with other parts of the world about the necessary skills and talents that we need. And we don't want these skilled people to be met with that kind of negative narrative. But we have it now. So trying to divide these two kinds of migration was something important to do, and to be as pragmatic as possible, so we could gain as broad support in the Parliament, because the broader support, the stronger message to the Commission. Yeah, and we did that. We gained over 75% of the votes in the parliament for our proposals. And many of our proposals, and I have to be very honest, I was very surprised, happily so surprised, positively so, when many of our proposals were taken on board, like the revision of the long-term residence, also but the single permit directive, and also the strengthening of the labor migrants' rights, and making it easier or even possible for them to be more accurate, to change abusive employer without losing their permit to stay. That in that manner also creating bigger incentives for them to file a report on an abusive employer. But the things that I miss in the proposal, and that I think actually was the more daring, was on one hand the nomad visas, allowing third country national to have a work permit in one country, but to actually live in another member state country. And we all know, I mean, one of the lessons learned from the pandemic is that a lot of people preferred to work remotely in another country, maybe took that opportunity. And I think that we maybe have not taking that chance now to suggest the nomad visas. I think that was not so good, to be honest. And the second thing is that the second issue that I miss also in that package is the permit for startups and self-employed. When it comes, if you have this broader outlook, the helicopter perspective is, I see the EU, the Union, as the world-leading power when it comes to innovation, when it comes to finding new solutions to the green transition, when it comes to finding solution for the climate change and the challenges that we are facing, and not being open-minded enough, and maybe courageous as well for startups, for innovative companies, self-employed, to come here and actually start their company and give them the necessary tools to have a life here. I think that was a little bit of a disappointment, to be honest, because we have to also, in the long term, be able to couple both the labor migration with economic growth, and also leading the world towards a better and more sustainable development. So I think I miss these bits and bytes, these two issues in the proposed package, and I hope that we can come back to it on a later stage.
Yeah, thank you so much. So it's I think there's clearly more to strive for in the future, even though it looks like we're on the right track. And the nomad visa kind of hit home with me, of course, because I'm a third country national in the Netherlands, living in the Netherlands, and I live in a border region. So in Maastricht, and I see with many of my colleagues that, being a third country national, you can't really live in Germany or in Belgium, even though I can run to Belgium in the morning. So, it's a bit tricky. So I can see how that could be very useful maybe in the future. So now we've heard from the Commission, we've heard from European Parliament. Let's take a member state perspective now. And with our next guest here is Bart Gabriels, who is working on legal migration in the cabinet of the State Secretary of Asylum and Migration of Belgium. And now, my question for you. So Belgium is a country with a rich tradition, actually, of skilled mobility partnerships. So how does a country like Belgium look at the new skills and talent package and the role that the Commission, in collaboration with the EEAs, has taken upon itself in steering the operationalization of the talent partnerships? So love to hear the Belgian perspective from you.
Yes, thank you for that question. Hello, everybody. It is not an easy question because there has been some doubt and discussion about how to react on the proposition from the Commission concerning the talent partnerships. It is true that Belgium has a tradition in the skills mobility partnerships. I had a list. I'm not going to give everything, but there are some lessons learned. So it's important, the Enhancing Tunisian Youth Employability Project. We gave 31 Tunisian graduates a possibility to follow an internship in Belgium. And afterwards they found quite easily work in Tunisia. So that's lessons learned. There is the project addressing labor shortages through innovative labor migration models. I'm in favor of shorter titles for projects also. But we gave some extra professional training to 120 Moroccan graduates and young people that should have come to Belgium, or part of it should have come to Belgium, but COVID didn't allow us. Yeah. So it's a pity we did not have that, that result and the experience of it. But because it was an example of a global skills partnership, the model is continued in the TAM project, which is originally initiated by Germany, I guess, that and Belgium would give professional training to 350 young people in Morocco and Tunisia, and give part of them the possibility to come to work in Belgium. So there is the match project that has been introduced before. And I want to add the WECO, because it's not always labor. There were 60 Senegalese entrepreneurs and 60 Belgian enterprises that are working together. The project brings them together with the help of 10 diaspora enterprises also to see if they can scale up their enterprises at both sides of the borders. Further, there is the continuation of the Enhancing Tunisian Youth Employability, and I wanted to add the displaced talent for Europe. We will try to give Syrian refugees in Lebanon and Jordan the possibility to come to work in Belgium. The administration right now is finding a solution, because it's not simple, finding a solution to make an application possible for someone for work and study in one package. Because you need the vocational training, the professional training, and the employment, and it is not possible to do everything in the country of origin, so we will need to have a period of extra study in Belgium, and the directive law is not made for that situation yet. So we are trying to find a solution. So that's a bit what we have been done, but now the lessons learned should take us to scaling up it, because it's true they are very costly, and it would be useful for everybody to go onto a bigger scale. But the bad news is now that Belgian governments, because we have more, have decided that for the talent partnership, it was asked to join the coalition of the willing to play a leading role and to say what the needs would be. And at this point, we don't know. We cannot put up a meaningful proposition to the Commission. Labor market is not a thing, you know. It's a living being. It's an ecosystem. It changes. We have now 25,000 new people on our labor market from Ukraine. We don't know yet how long they will be staying. We don't know even yet what their qualifications are. So at this point, it's very difficult to look into the future and see what we need. So that's the bad news concerning the talent partnerships, that we will not take a leading role in that, but we are waiting, looking forward to the content that the talent partnerships will will get, how it will look like, what we will need. And meanwhile, what we are doing, as in the study of Navarra is told, the benefits are there, or found, where the actions can be jointly implemented. And many of the necessary conditions are not met yet. Social security is not foreseen, it's not made for a situation when someone comes and goes. At this time, seasonal workers, they come to Belgium, work, pay social security, and leave what they paid. So they will never get what they paid for social security, so for themselves. So these kind of systems need to be adapted, and that will take a while. What we are doing in the meanwhile is to make an application possible, a transparent digital application for migration and possible for labor migration, and possibly for labor migration and a bit more. If that procedure is can go fast, digital and transparent, then maybe at that point we will try to implement more projects or a talent partnership. And it has to be seen. I have been told to tell you that talent partnerships should be seen in a broader migration context. If it is circular, then every circular migration that we organize should be respected by both partners, of course. If it's a real co-ownership, it's not just about a little group of people. It's about the migration broadly seen.
Well, thank you very much for the Belgian perspective there. It does seem like there is a lot of experience there in Belgium, a big scope for possibility, and there's definitely willingness. So it's about, what those next steps are and implementation and all of the things, and there are a lot of challenges. I feel like you guys on the here on the panel are just talking about the challenges of my everyday life as a third country national in the EU.
I'll try to fix the border, the border crossing jobs. We'll try to fix. And,
fantastic.
Should be possible. Limburg is one country anyway.
Yes, and I mean, there are challenges, of course, right? But I always say where there's a will, there's a way, and we can overcome challenges if the right will is there. So let's continue to move on with continuing with the member state perspective, but a specific member state that will be taking over the council presidency soon. So I will turn to Antonin Sidel, who is the head of the Foreign Employment Unit at the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs of the Czech Republic. So the Czech Republic, as I said, will be taking over the council presidency in just a few weeks. So while we're looking at the member state level, and to change your own labor market systems with the introduction of a point-based system of labor migration that seems to be coming, what will the Czech presidency's priorities in the field of labor migration be, and how will the presidency work with third countries from a labor migration perspective?
Thank you for the question.
Easy questions, right?
For the introduction. And well, the framework is simple because of the initiative of the Commission, the legal migration and skills and talent package, which consists of one communication, which consists of 3 pillars. It's not needed to introduce them. One of them is the talent pool, one of tools which can help us to facilitate the recruitment of foreign workers. And then there is a recast of 2 directives, which we will focus on. We will try to facilitate all debates and to move forward with the first reading in the Council. But what is important for my country, well, for the Czech Republic, because Czech Republic in the past decade became a destination country for labor migration. After the crisis, the depression we experienced 10 years ago, the recovery brought new labor market shortages within our economy, which meant that in the past 6 years, the number of foreign workers on our labor market nearly doubled. We are now about 600,000 foreign workers, both from European Union countries and third countries, which are working in the Czech economy, in the Czech Republic. And for a country which has 10 million inhabitants, it is a lot. And if you look on the current unemployment levels in the Czech Republic, we are around 3.3%, which is very less. We will need more workers to come in the country. So we started to facilitate some 8 years ago the recruitment process. We introduced some fast-track programs for certain employers. 3 years ago, we introduced programs of economic migration, which are non-legislative tool, which are run in the cooperation with employers themselves, with employers association. The idea is to facilitate the migration towards the employers who are reliable, who are verified, because we are not willing to move these people to employers who are illegally employing them or exploiting them. So this is the first idea. Other idea is that within these programs there is a salary threshold, which is not high, but there is a salary threshold. It is above the minimum wage, more than minimum wage. Again, the idea is to stop the labor exploitation, but also to protect the labor conditions in the country, to avoid the social dumping. So that's the idea. And of course, this system is running on quotas for different countries. So we are selecting countries from which we are recruiting the people. And well, one of the major country of source country was Ukraine for the Czech Republic. So that's other thing I will mention later. But the idea of running this system, we are running them within the current legislative framework. And our work permits and resident permits, driven by the single permit directive or blue card directive, they are not distinguishing a lot among the people on basis of their skills. And we had this idea to foster or to support the migration and the attraction of the country for the highly qualified people and qualified people, which our economy really needs. And for this reason, we applied for technical support instrument from DG Reform for European Commission, and we applied with a program for introduction of this point-based system. This project is run by Christophe's colleagues from OECD, and they are doing very good job. And the idea is that these point-based systems, they already work in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Great Britain recently introduced this system in their labor migration management. And the idea is that this system is ranking the migrants and is giving better conditions for those migrants which are needed in the country, facilitating the procedures and giving them longer permits for all their family. Well, and the idea behind this is that we are decreasing barriers for these people to move in the country. And this ranking is based on points allocated for several features which are crucial for the country, such as skills, even skills in particular sectors, in particular professions. So we can see that we have some forecast of qualifications needed on the labor market, and based on these qualifications, we can approve this point-based grid. So we can flexibly manage the system, because the system is run in these countries on the basis of the statutory instruments. So the executive, based on some legislative framework, of course, within the Act, can flexibly decide who wants to get in the country. So this is the idea how we would like to manage the system, and how we would like to base it more on needs and on skills and qualifications. But of course, it is a national approach, and you are more interested on what we will doing in the next 6 months. I talked about it before. Of course, there is the question on how far we can go with these directives, how the treaties, the founding treaties, how far we can go. I think that these directives can facilitate the procedural way, and that the Union can support us in data sharing and in cooperation with third countries on creating legal pathways and in creating these new tools. One third country, which is very important, I already mentioned it is Ukraine. You know, I know that temporary protection, it is not a labor migration scheme. It is a humanitarian one. We offer the shelter for people who are fleeing from the war. But one idea, and the talent pool will be piloted in this area, is that these people are coming in our countries. They are qualified, and we shall try to retain their qualification levels and perhaps also to increase it. Not because of our labor market shortages, but because they will need it in the reconstruction phase. So I think that we have now running one mobility partnership with Ukraine. They didn't choose it, but we can build up some programs which will be mutually beneficial for us and for Ukraine. So that's perhaps one thing we should focus on. And last thing, because there is my colleague from Ministry of Interior, we will have also a presidential EMN conference on October, where all these topics will be discussed. Among them, the labor migration will be very, very important. Also, what we should have in mind always is that the people coming in our countries, they are not machines. They have their needs, and we have to set up also services to support them. Children's for schools for the children's. Accommodation, which should have some level of quality, and other things. So that's what we are going to do in the next 6 months.
Great, thanks for outlining that for us, and it looks like a bright future ahead there. So we've had a lot of different perspectives. Now let's turn to a more international perspective. So our next guest is Jean-Christophe Dumont, who is the head of the International Migration Division at the Directorate for Employment, Labor and Social Affairs at the OECD. So the OECD has authored and co-authored studies on the attractiveness of the EU and its member states towards migrants, towards highly skilled migrants. What do you think we can expect from these talent partnerships in terms of attractiveness, and what will their relation be to the needs of the EU labor market? And I know you guys also recently came out with a talent attractiveness tool also, where, you know, countries but also individuals can say, you know, what am I looking for, and what can countries give me? So it's interesting to think about where the EU will rank here.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to EMN for the invitation and the excellent collaboration. Thank you to Alexander, particularly on this inform. I mean, we all know there are huge skilled needs in the EU. They are due to a number of factors, some short-term, some longer-term, digital transformation, the post-COVID recovery period, and obviously the population aging and the structural, let's say, labor needs which are associated to that. I mean, it's important to have in mind that these needs are at all skill level. They are ranging from almost elementary work to the most highly skilled. And probably one of the big issues is indeed in this middle skill segment, notably because young people, the size of youth entering the labor market, the size of a cohort is decreasing, and obviously people are also looking for opportunity for training, and maybe even in countries with very strong vocational education system like Switzerland, Austria, or Germany, we see some challenges to fill the classroom in a way. And so there are certainly particular needs here. I think it's important, if you pose a question like this, from the outset to say, it should be a multidimensional response. So migration, yes, but not only migration. And this is also important if you want to sell this project and to explain to the public opinion that you want to spend some money in this talent partnership. You need to improve the active labor market policies. You need to improve the training, and yes, migration is probably part of the solution. Once you said that, it's also important to maybe think about what sort of migration, and I think I would follow Hélène in her remarks that it's not bilateral labor agreements of the past, which were simply recruitment processes and bringing people from country A to country B and maybe sending them back in country A after their period. There is absolute need to link migration and training together. So in a way, I would really think that all migration management is a skills partnership in a way, because all migration management programs should have an element of whether it is assessment, certification of skills, whether it's upskilling, whether it's language training. So there always should be such element. And actually, yes, there are plenty of examples from the past and the present of these agreements. And it's fair to say that some of the issues which have been stressed already are extremely important. So one issue is indeed, as I think Camilla and also Anita said, the lack of trust of the countries of origin. They don't necessarily trust that they have something to gain in this process. So this is something we need to think from the outset, how we can bring them aboard and also design this program so that the trust is built inside the design. I think if we look at the previous examples, and Alexander quoted some from, and I will only focus on OECD non-EU, it's easier in a way. It's obvious that this program often didn't really, let's say, give entire satisfaction for a number of reasons. Either because they created a supply, or they increased the pool of skills in the country of origin, but without matching it to opportunities in the destination country. So there was a training component, was fine, it was maybe designed for the destination country, but not necessarily thought entirely in terms of demand. And so that failed. Some cases, the training component was there, but it was not linked to the training, to the employment opportunities in the country of origin. I think the EPS system is in Korea is very clear of that. Yes, there is a training component, but all people who are employed back home, they work for Korean firms or they don't work. So it works well if they stay in this framework, but outside the framework, that doesn't really work. There are cases where the training component exists, but it's very weak. Again, taking another example, which is in the Inform about the technical intern trainee program in Japan. Actually, yes, they say it's a training program, but it's a labor migration management program. There is nothing really, very little skills that people gain through the program. So for me, and maybe some people will disagree, I think there is one example of a big global scale, sustainable talent partnership, if I can call it like this, which is very successful, where actually governments are not engaged. And this is the one that is run by shipping companies for seafarers. It goes from the lowest skill level to the highest. It goes from the cooks to the mechanic, and this is entirely funded by the enterprises. The schooling system is designed by them. I mean, I'm not saying this program, this system is immune from issues, and I think there are some issues regarding workers' rights, and I mean, I'm not saying this is the perfect model, but this is a model that is large scale and has been fully funded by the private sector. So it's possible. And just to close, I think from the lessons learned, I think first of all that we should realize that centrally managed program won't work. So what makes a program work? And I think there are three conditions which have been already mentioned one way or the other. This is engaging with employers, engaging with employers, and engaging with employers. Engaging with employers in the design of a program, engaging in employers with the development of a training program, of a curricula, and engaging with employer in the matching and selection system. And then employers are ready to pay. And this is the big issue, because employers are not part of this conversation. Employer organization, it's not within their remit. And single employers, they don't see the point for them. So really the big challenge, I think, to scale up this program is to find a way to engage with employers, obviously make that fit within national management programs. It's not for employers to decide how many people will come and who should come entirely. It should be fit within the national governance systems. But what is the missing puzzle, I think, in this whole discussion is employers. And I don't necessarily have a solution to how to engage with them, but I think this is a critical point.
Thank you very much. So employers, everyone got that on? Okay. So thank you for those first interventions. I think those were really, really useful. And I want to now go to maybe one or two questions that can kind of go to the whole panel, and you guys can see where you want to pick it up. But I know in the audience you're probably wondering, well, when do we get to talk and when do we get to ask questions? Don't worry. Just after the coffee break, we're going to have 30 minutes only for Q&A, so feel free to, I'm sure you're already thinking of a lot of hard-hitting questions for this panel. All right, so we've heard obviously now a lot about these talent partnerships. You know, in the inform that we saw, also the results showed that EU member states experiences in implementing the SMPs really differ quite significantly. So of the 23 member states that participated in the inform, 15 member states didn't have any SMPs in place, while 8 member states did. And even though the majority of EU member states did not have an experience, you know, some maybe like the Czech Republic or Lithuania or Slovakia or Slovenia reported having relevant initiatives with at least some of the elements of the SMPs. So I guess maybe what the most important question here is for our panelists is, you know, how can the TPs and the SMP be encouraged, you know, for all of the member states? How can we get the other member states to participate more, and maybe what are the challenges or barriers there? Anyone like to, yes, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it was me, yeah? You pointed at, Melissa?
Yes, yes, it was.
Yeah.
I just hit behind you.
Well, I think that the talent partnerships are a way of actually decreasing human suffering. Why? Because these are legal migration pathways, and it will actually circumvent the smugglers and the illegal pathways, because today the European Union, we don't have any legal pathways to migrate. And we know for a fact that a large number of those who are seeking migration to the European Union are doing that because of economic reasons. It's not because of political persecution or because of wars, but because they are looking for a better opportunity in life and they want to build a new life. And having that kind of processes in place could actually save many people from suffering and doing these dangerous travels over the Mediterranean on one hand, or being in the hands of the smugglers. So that is one, the human factor. The other point is actually for our economies to grow. This is a very important factor because, as you said, that if we labor migration should be about coming to a job. It's not only, a form of migration, but also coming to a job, contributing to society from day one, and being an active part of our societies and communities. So economic growth is a very important factor here, and I do hope that we can hold on to that one to also make it relevant for our companies and employers, so they also get engaged in this process, and either it is designing, but also or paying for the vocational training, but also for the salary in some time when they are trained and done. But that also demands that we have circularity that is working, where you respect actually the rules and that people know when an employment starts and when it ends, and that I have to go back. So we don't undermine our own systems of legal framework. I think these three things are very important here, so we can get more member states on board.
Okay, thanks. And I have so many questions to follow up from that, but any other inputs? Yes, Anita.
I can come in. No, I mean, indeed, yes, $1,000,000 question, I would say, because my daily challenge, is to, of course, also convince more and more member states to be on board on these talent partnerships. But I think beyond the politics and the vision of a member state, which I think Belgium also refers to, what you hear a lot about is as well, it's a complex process. We heard, social security issues. Member states wonder as well how much they have to invest in terms of setting it up, being part of the process. So I think really there are worries and concerns in terms of, let's say, the administrative burden that developing such programs and such partnerships could entail. And I think what would be useful is, of course, for us to try and simplify a little bit the process in one way or another, but also maybe learning from how the pilots have worked and understanding a little bit from those member states that have done such programs already, how their experience was and what did they do really concretely within their administration to bring, for instance, the necessary actors around the table, the employers. I think there is an element of trying to build on the positive experiences of other member states to get more and more member states on board. And I believe, the EMN and all the work and the pilots that you've been doing will be important in that process as well once we move on with talent partnerships. So I think the administrative burden or concern is something that one needs to probably discuss and exchange upon more, in my view, to bring more member states on board.
Yeah, so really kind of the simplification of processes, maybe streamlining, learning from each other, maybe even some capacity development to also deal in these areas. Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. Anyone else want to? Yes, Helen.
Just to quickly follow up on that, and I feel like I have to say this because I'm a researcher, we need more evaluations of all of these schemes. We did a big review of 57 legal migration pathways. 2 had value for money analyses, and only 1 of those was public. We know a lot about what the costs of these schemes are, and the administrative burden is frequently highlighted. We know basically nothing about what the benefits of these schemes are to all actors involved. When there are evaluations, they tend to solely focus on the benefits to the migrants or the trainees themselves. So how much money did they earn? How much money did they send home? We don't have a good understanding of what the benefits to employers are. By hiring these people, how were they able to grow, be more productive, hire more local workers? And we don't know what the benefits are to countries of destination or origin, really, either, in terms of this capacity building, strengthen foreign policy relationships, increase trade and investment. And until we put in place good evaluation schemes, I think it's going to be very difficult to prove to new states the benefits of signing up.
Yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely. Of course, I'm wholeheartedly behind this initiative. So something that came up in the first two talks and also now, and I think, Aber, you even just mentioned something about it, was the element of circularity. And this has come up also in a lot of other schemes that have been proposed and things. And I'm wondering, you know, if you think that an element of circularity in these partnerships is important, do you think it makes the model more attractive, or do you think it makes it less attractive? And of course, keeping in mind that a lot of these shortages are structural. Why do we talk so much about circularity? So anyone want to take that one? Yeah,
I guess for national policy, it is important to stress that if there is a labor shortage that is temporary or structural, whatever, and some new labor forces come in, if they stay, that will create another labor shortage. So the combination of the economic growth that there is or should be there, and the population growth, and the fact that you are scared about the growing population will need a growing economy, and the growing economy will need more people, that it probably has some limit. So for policy to explain how you're going to find a solution for a labor shortage, it is probably more easily to explain. We will have a solution, temporary, if not necessary, and then the people will go live in their country. So that's as explaining to the people what you're doing, that might be useful. And again, the experience with former migrations and the experience we have still now is that many people are trapped in their new country. Most people in the 60s and 70s did not come to Belgium to stay there, but they were trapped. And many people are now, the system we have is we make it difficult at a door to come in, but when you're in, you're supposed to stay. If you leave for a year, you just lose your right to come back in. So people lie about living outside of the country. They say, I'm living in Belgium, but actually living in Morocco, because if they say that they left the country, they will never get in anymore. So the concept of a possible circular migration, it should not be an obligation to be a circle, because many people don't want to live in two countries, probably. But for those who want to, just working there, but living there, at this point, there is no legislation that is really fit to the situation. So if a talent partnership could extend this possibility, it should not be only about circular migration, I guess, because it's not the solution for everything. But it is a solution that does not exist right now. So if a talent partnership could add the possibility to the possibilities that there are right now, I guess that would make it more attractive for the people who want to work there and live there.
I see. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but Jean-Christophe, I already saw you looking like you wanted to say something, so I'm going to put you on the spot on this idea of circularity and shortages.
Yeah, I think there is kind of a myth about the migration that is best to be circular for all the parties involved. And I mean, as you rightly said, yes, in some cases this is probably a good solution, notably when the needs in the destination country are fixed term, and then the person stays for some time and maybe goes back to his or her country or to another country. It's also possible. But there are also a lot of these skills needs which are more structural and where it would make no sense to turn over people on a regular basis. If you think long-term care, if I need someone to take care of my parents, I don't want that person to change every 6 months. Yes. And certainly that person needs also to invest in some particular skills that make him or her fit for the job. And so it would make no sense to have a high turnover rate in that case. Doesn't mean that person will stay forever, but it's not necessarily a fixed term, let's say short-term migration. I think the beauty of a talent partnership or skills partnership or global skills partnership, whatever word you want to use, is that it's flexible. It's an idea that you need to combine some skills development with a migration. And there are different ways to do that. You can do the training one place or another place. The cost can be shared in different ways. In a way, international students are skills partnership. They are paying for part of their study. And the destination country is paying also for part of the study. That can be thought as a talent skills partnership as well. So this is flexible. Let's not try to fit everything in one single box, because the needs are very different from one country to the next, from one sector to the next.
Thank you. So flexibility is key. Now, we have to stop there with our first section. We're going to have a coffee break now, and then when we come back, it will be your turn to engage in the discussion. So make sure that you're back at 3:50. So that's 3:50, and we'll get started again. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.